Welcome back to Kids Church Online. I hope you guys are all doing well and you had an amazing week. Share in the comments with us who is here this morning and tell us one thing that happened to you this week that was amazing. Well, guys, we are in our last week on our series on trust. It's been such a great series full of great reminders that it's important to trust God when we don't understand, when it seems impossible, and when what He tells us to do or what He promises seems a little bit ridiculous. Here with me this morning, I have two magnets. One represents us and the other one represents God. And if I hold the magnets close together, they are going to stick together. And this is what it is like with us and God. He will stick by our side and He is always with us, even when we're worried or scared. We can always trust God to be with us and to keep His promises. This week, our big idea is, are you ready for it? We can trust God to keep His promises. So here's this week's video. Let's see what we can learn from Abraham and Sarah's story this week.
Hey guys, I'm Laura.
And I'm Corey, and today we're looking at what makes God different from all of us.
There's a lot of things that makes God different from us. He's almighty, He's perfect, He's always with us.
Definitely, and all of those things are true, but the one thing I can always count on is we can trust God to keep His promises.
And sometimes He answers His promises in ways that we'll never understand, but they're always great. Watch this.
We've been talking about the story of Abram and Sarai. God changed their name last week to Abraham. Well, not just last week, it was thousands of years ago. Well, hello, Bruxy here. Welcome back. Today we're talking about promises. Have you ever made a promise and you forgot to keep it? I did. I'll tell you, one time I said to George, our St. Bernard, very cuddly, kind of drooly, said, George, want to go for a walk? He knows what the word walk means. It means walk. And he gets excited. He gets all dancy. He gets all prancy. He gets all waggy. He gets all drooly. But then I realize he's so excited. I've made a promise to him. We're heading out the door. He even picks up the leash in his mouth and sits there waiting like the cutest little pumpkin. And then my phone rang. I picked it up and got talking, and I completely forgot about George. I talked, and then I just ran out of time. I couldn't walk George anymore, and there he was sitting by the door, his leash in his mouth, drool everywhere, feeling all droopy, and I felt bad. You know, because we're imperfect, we often make promises and fail to keep them or forget about them, but it's not that way with God. He's perfect. So when He makes a promise, nothing gets in His way, and He never forgets. That's why our big idea is this. We can trust God to keep His promises. Over these weeks, we've been talking about the story of Abram and Sarai. God changed their name to Abraham and Sarah, and He promised them, you're going to have a son, Isaac. At first they laughed, but then it happened, and that's what we're reading about today. Let's dive in. In Genesis chapter 21, we read this. The Lord was gracious to Sarah, just as He had said He would be. He did for Sarah what He had promised to do. Sarah became pregnant. She had a son by Abraham when he was old. He was born at the exact time God had promised him. I'll say he was old. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born, and Sarah was 91. Then we read, Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah had by him. Remember, Isaac means laughter. This was pretty funny. Then, when his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him. He did it exactly as God had commanded him. Circumcised him? What's that? It's a sign that you are committed to the covenant, just as God is committed to the covenant. Remember, a covenant is a promise, an official way of being together in partnership. You know, when I married my wife Nina, I made a covenant with her, a promise that we're going to be partners together. And I put a sign on my finger, a wedding ring, to show people we're in this together. That's what circumcision was. It was a sign of the covenant. And if you don't know what circumcision is, ask your folks. Back to the Bible, Genesis 21, verse 6. Sarah said, God has given laughter to me. Everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. Not at me, with me. She continued, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? But I've had a son by him when he is old. So God fulfilled His promise, and that's what God does. Often before He does something, He promises that He's going to do it so that we can get excited about it before it comes to pass, and we can watch to see God keep His promise. That builds more faith in us, more trust in whatever God says. That's why before I take George for a walk, I say, Hey, George, want to go for a walk? And he gets excited. It's all part of the experience. And God has lots of promises for us about good things. Some of them we've already seen come to pass, and others we're waiting on. But we can have confidence that whatever God promises, He's going to do. That's why when God promises things in the Bible, like the fact that He will bring good out of everything in our lives, even the things that go wrong, He'll bring good out of it. I can trust Him because He's proven it through Jesus. So let that truth settle in your heart and you hold on to it. We can trust God to keep His promises. Well, I'm Bruxy. It's been fun hanging out, and we'll see each other next week. Bye.
Okay, turn to the person beside you.
And answer the following questions.
Question time. God promised Abraham and Sarah a son. What was their son's name? Joseph, Jacob, Tyler, Isaac, or Connor? Isaac. God promised someone to the whole world too. Who was the promised rescuer for us? Moses, Superman, Jesus, Goliath, or David? Jesus. Do you know the promise that Jesus made to us? We will be rich, He can bring good out of everything, or we won't have any problems. He can bring good out of everything. Game time! Candy Chaos. How many times can you say the key verse before things get messy? Say it with me. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing to others. I will bless those who bless you. I will put a curse on anyone who puts a curse on you. All nations on earth will be blessed because of you. Genesis 12, verses 2 to 3. Get ready. 3, 2, 1, go!
Hey, have you ever had to wait a really long time for something you really wanted?
Yes, when I was 7 years old, I could not wait to have my driver's license so I could drive my dad's car. I wanted to get behind that wheel so bad, and it felt like I was waiting forever. But when I finally got my license, it felt so good.
I can definitely relate to that. I was the same. But isn't it crazy how in life sometimes we get so impatient waiting for the things that we want? In Abraham and Sarah's story, though, we see that God always delivers His promises no matter how long it takes.
That's so true. And now my friend James has an interesting story about how he learned to trust God, and I asked him to share it with you guys. Let's check it out.
I grew up playing soccer. I played indoor and outdoor for about 8 years. And I just love how you're with people, you're running around, I love scoring goals, and I love playing sports with people. In elementary school and middle school, I was bullied. Two guys, for some reason, they didn't like me. So one day they'd treat me as a friend, another day I'd be their enemy. It was a mixture of just emotional, verbal, and sometimes physical bullying, and just dealing with that. And it was a new school too I was at, so it was difficult for me to try and make friends and see where I stood in that relationship. It was really hard, especially if there's a circumstance where someone calls you something or challenges you to something in front of a big group of people. You don't know how to react. It's awkward, it's embarrassing. I had no idea what to do or how to deal with it or how to respond. My mom would be there, she'd comfort me, she'd pray with me and allow me to talk through it and talk with me and process that. There'd be times where I'd come back from school crying and just breaking down and telling what happened that day. and they prayed for me, they prayed with me. That gave me more support, and I wasn't kind of a lone ranger going through that. My relationship with God and my faith at the time really carried me through that. My parents pointed me towards that, and just praying with them and praying by myself, just asking God for strength to go through it, praying for safety for the bullies, and then I found a verse, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 3, and it just says, blessed is the God who comforts us through our difficulties so that in the future we're able to comfort others. And just having that hope and being reminded of that God is with me, and regardless of what happens at school, that He's with me through it all, and that He can use that to comfort others in the future. That was really something that helped me through it. Today, it's completely different. I had that dark spot in my life, but God brought me through that. He provided me with friends that I could goof off with, I could be myself with, and who just love me for who I am. And I'm so thankful for that. He came through on His promise. What He said in the Bible, in that verse that I mentioned, that His promises came through. He comforted me through that, and because of that, now I'm secure where I am now. And when I look to the future, I know that He has my best intentions in mind, and that because of what He did in the past, I can now feel secure in His plans and not have to worry about that.
Why are so many kids getting bullied, and why do people feel the need to bully others?
Yeah, those are some tough questions, and to be honest, we can't answer those today or in a week or even a month from now. But what I have learned from James is that while he was being bullied, he held on to God's promise, and that promise gave him the strength to get through the hard times, and even gave him the strength to pray for the bullies, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, that's incredible. Let's break into our small groups now and talk about this.
God had promised Abraham and Sarah that they would have a baby, and they did when they were 100 and when they were 99 years old. There you can see Abraham and Sarai with their baby. They had a son, and they named him Isaac, which means laughter, which we talked a little bit about last week. God had fulfilled the promise that He made to Abraham. God has lots of promises for us, some that have already happened, like the promise of a Savior coming to save us, which was fulfilled through Jesus being born, then dying and being raised, being born, dying, and then being raised from the dead. But there are still other promises that we are still waiting on, like the day that Jesus will come back. We can have confidence and be sure to trust that whatever God promises to us will come to pass. There are so many examples of the Bible of God's promises being fulfilled that we have no reason to doubt that what God promises will actually happen. If you ever feel like you're not sure if God will actually do something that He says He will, take some time to look through the Bible and come up with a list of all the different promises that God made to different people, different nations throughout the whole Bible, and write those down and keep that list close by so that you can refer to it later as a good reminder that God does follow through on His promises. We can always trust God's promises, even if we don't understand, or if they seem impossible, or if they seem a little bit ridiculous. Well, guys, thanks for joining me this last week in our series. I can't wait to meet with you again next week as we jump into our new series called Genesis Relationships. I hope you have a wonderful week. Take care, and we'll see you all next week.